Hello and welcome to Gierok Farms. In today's video, my dad's gonna give a bit of a how-to tutorial on how to sharpen a chainsaw. So I hope you guys enjoy.
No one's ever taught me how to sharpen a saw. I mean, my dad showed me briefly one time, and then, you know, pretty soon it gets dull, and then you find yourself trying to figure it out. When we put the shop together, I set this vise up for this, exactly this. So I'm at this height, so I can see everything. I'm not crouched over. And then over here, you know, this is a piece of truck frame, and these holes were all in there already. So I got all my different size files in there. So you got your 404, for your 3/8, your 1/4 inch, and I got some other types here too. Sometimes I bring the rakers down, and different chainsaw wrenches. So it holds on to them all really nice. So anyhow, this is a 3/8 chain on a 25-inch bar. And if you can see there, see right here on top the tooth, you see this little tiny line, reference line. That shows you the angle. Now there's a lot of fancy tools you can buy. You can put these files into, and I've personally never used them. I've always done it with the normal handle on a file, and I buy my files in bulk. And it'll say right on your package, 1/4 inch for 3/8. So that's the type of tooth, the 1/4, and the 3/8 is your pitch, which is a distance between each rivet. Even if you're not sure what chain you got, you can look at a chainsaw file and fit it in the groove there and tell. And it does say on them, there's fine print right up at the handle. Every chain's got it, you know, different size. Like this would be 1/4 inch. It'd be obviously too small there. And the ones that always kind of get me is the 404 to the 3/8. I mean, you gotta look close, but this one here is a little bigger. And you may be able to sharpen this chain with this 404 on a 3/8 chain, but then you end up kind of making your tooth what it's not supposed to be. That's something to watch out for. But typically when you buy a saw and go to your dealer, if you got your chain width and your saw width, if they know what they're doing, they should get you the right one. So your tooth will cut, and then this little stub here, I call it a raker. There's other terms for that, but that brings the sawdust out behind each tooth. And if you sharpen this guy down, I always say maybe 2 to 3 times sharpening this guy, then you got to get a flat file and take that guy down. And sometimes count your strokes. I've even done it with a small angle grinder, but you got to really be careful because you don't have to take very much off. And pretty soon you're taking too much wood out, and that's when the saw gets really grabby. So we're going to start on this side. So every other tooth, a lot of times I'll look for a spot in the chain. You see right here? It's where they connected the chain. It's yellow. So you can start there, or you can put a mark on top of one so you know where you started and where to stop. I mean, you sometimes, if you're looking close enough, I can see the sawdust down in there. And I've done this so many times. For every length of bar I got, I already know how many teeth are on each side. And this one's got 21 teeth on each side, which means it's got 42 teeth total. So I'll do this in my head and try not to get distracted. Say you go 3 strokes, or you're gonna go 4. Depends on how dull it is. So we went 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. And right down the line. And you do that in your head, and that helps me keep track. And then you gotta come around on the other side. This side I always have a little more trouble with because it's just the angle of your body. 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on down the line. I count the strokes. Sometimes you stumble a little. You gotta look at your tooth. You might have to do an extra stroke here and there. You're not gonna get it perfect. The big logging guys, the chainsaw carving guys, they all do it just the way I'm doing it here. They say do it by hand. You don't create as much heat. You don't ruin your temperament. They say they get the best results. May not be perfectly even, but they go by this. Experiences probably means more than anything else. So you got to try to stay straight across. You can get like this, you can get like this. Again, it's all practice, it's your eye. And the big thing is everything is stationary here. Sometimes you're on a tool bench and everything is moving. Try to do this out in the woods. They've got different vices you can pound into a log, or a lot of times I'll wedge it in between something, between your trailer hitch and your tractor, or your wood pile or something, or have someone help hold it even. But yeah, that angle is a big thing. And the rakers, I like to try to do them before I sharpen the chain, if I'm gonna do them. And again, count the strokes, because sometimes you end up nicking your already sharp chain, so then you gotta go back over it with your file again. And you should be able to sharpen a chain like this dozens of times. These files are quite inexpensive, and even your bars are expensive. So when your chain is dull, it creates so much heat, especially at the tip, that you end up ruining your bar, and you wear your groove in there faster, and you wear everything out so much quicker. So there's nothing worse than a dull chain and trying to make a cut. The best thing I can say is do some research. Talk to people that do this all the time. That is your best bet. And it seems like every day we're learning something new. Kind of roll my file, you move it to a different spot. I can already tell my file's starting to lose its, sometimes I like to tap on it, kind of get the filings to fall off of it. It's just like any saw blade, when you get teeth start to fill up with the filings. But you try to keep that angle and get kind of a smooth action, a little bit of pressure. You don't want your chain too tight. You gotta be able to freely move it. But a little trick can be, you can loosen this up, tighten your chain up a little tighter, or put your brake on too, but tighten it up tighter. That way your chain isn't trying to work its way out of the groove as you're sharpening, because you get a little play there. But the tighter the chain is, and then when you're done sharpening, you can loosen your chain back up so you get that nice free. So I've been doing that too from time to time. This is the way I do it. I don't have all the proper terms down and everything, but I've done this my whole life. And we were successful with it. But a lot of trial and error at first, and then eventually just get good at these things. So now you notice how the tips appear to be replaceable. And I've asked guys about that. I thought, is it worth replacing? And I've never had one replaced. Seems like when they go out, the rest of the bar is so wore out, it may not pay off. Maybe they just do that just for manufacturing purposes, but you can buy those. See now here, this is a 325, but anyway, this isn't able to be replaced. But there still is a sprocket in there, but I think it's being a little smaller bar. Now you can get these where they're just a solid nose. There's no sprocket in there. They're usually a lot bigger. They're good for blocking. I like those, but when you start doing a lot of plunge cutting where you're pushing through the tree, that can get awfully hot. You get a lot of kickback on those big noses. The bigger this nose, the more teeth you got on the end. So for instance, like here, you might have 2 teeth. Try and do some kickback. You get with my carving bars, you only got 1 tooth that's on the end. There's virtually no kickback at all with this saw because of that. And these again, small besides, they're not that big. You maybe still only got 1 tooth on the end there. You see I got a tooth missing on that chain. Minimal kickback, and they got these low kickback chains and all that, and I recommend them to the guy that starts out. Now here, this is a big nose. This one will kick big time. You got almost 3 teeth on the end there, on the end of your bar. but a good blocking saw, very good blocking saw. It won't wear out as fast because you got a lot more nose there for wear. So smaller nose will wear fast. But now I bought a lot of these books. This here guy, he was quite a chainsaw guy back in the day, more back in the 70s. This Hal McIntosh. And he's got a lot of stuff in this book. And what I want to talk about is these chains. We got 1/2 inch, 404, 3/8, 325, and 1/4 inch. That's pretty much your chain sizes. And then this little hook on the bottom, that's what they call the drive length. Like your length of the chain is measured by your drive lengths. So you would tell your dealer you got 55 drives on a 3/8 chain, and then they would go and either make it up or have one on the shelf already. These 250s, they would come with the 325. Those carving bars, that's 1/4 inch. Not really, you know, kind of in between your normal homeowner and your kind of firewood saw. And I switched them up to the mini with the 3/8 because it's thinner. You can virtually cut around the corner with that. So I don't use anything in 325 right now, but I do have all the sprockets and everything that came with the saw originally. And then your 3/8, that's your most common. So on all the generally larger saws, got the 3/8. 404, now that's on that 880. You couldn't get it on the 660s too. It's really aggressive. I would think if you're cutting oak and stuff, you're probably still better off with this one because it takes such a big chip out. And the 1/2 inch, I've seen it on these old vintage saws. You don't see much of that around anymore. I'm sure they use it somewhere yet, maybe on those log processors or firewood processors or something, I'm guessing, I don't know. That's a big chain. So my chainsaw accessory drawer, what I like to do, and a lot of these boxes aren't really labeled for the chain. They take them off the roll, they make the chain and they throw them in a box. But I always like to write on them what their lengths are, what they fit. So I got little notes on all these boxes so I can just grab them and go. And there's a couple used ones in here besides that were switched up, but they're still good. Length don't really mean nothing, it's just to fit the bar that it's for. I believe this is for my 25 inch on the 880. Now this one in the middle, that's what they call 3/8. That's the most common. And then you got your 404. Now you look at the difference in the length. And then here your 325. You know, and you look at how far apart the teeth are, and then I got one more. There, now that's 1/4 inch. And look at how much smaller them guys are. Now there's another thing to show. That's the tooth. And then chisel, semi-chisel, and their chipper. But this would be what they call a chisel. And some of the guys will just call it the square tooth. So what happens is this point on here gets dull. It's dull. It don't matter how sharp the rest of it is. It can't dig anymore. And then you got, I call them round tooth. They can call them chippers, but like here's a round tooth. You could cut in the dirt a little more with this chain and it would stay sharper longer because it's sharp all the way around, and all of it's, you know, you got more edge digging in. We call it round and square, but you know, the correct term is chisel and semi-chisel and chipper, but I'm sure it depends on the saw brand what they call them. But so we got some sprockets here. This is what they call a rim sprocket, and that's got eight grooves. So, and this would be a 7, 3/8, 7. So these are both the 3/8 chain. They fit the same saw, but what it does is one speeds it up, just having a bigger sprocket on there. So you can go cut faster, but you lose some horsepower. This one will cut slower, but more horsepower. So, and maybe like every 3rd or 4th chain that you put on your saw, you should replace this. Might not make as much difference. Maybe it'll just end up stretching your new chain faster if you use an old sprocket. And then these here, that's just an older version of sprockets. You got your 1/4 inch. And I'm thinking these are 325. The reason I have these is I've had to switch out what the saw came with to fit the chain and bar I wanted to put on. So we got these extra parts. And every saw I buy comes with this kit. And there's a screwdriver in there, the wrench that fits your saw and spark plug, maybe an Allen wrench in there to help take whatever apart. And then you can see here the different ones. And this here is my most common. I probably got a dozen of these already. And that to tune up your carburetor and stuff. And then here you got your torque on the end. One of those should come with every saw. So this represents how much I've cut. Now this ain't all of them. I was throwing them away for the longest time, but I started hanging on to them just as reference. And again, you got your 1/4 inch, your 3/8 minis. These are all my carving chains, and a lot of them are broke. And you manipulate the chain to the tree in such a way that it's twisting, and you're doing a lot of scraping with it. It ends up eventually breaking the chain. And then these are my stock bar, my 3/8 stock bar chains. You got your 24 inch and this here, mostly firewood cutting, a lot of blocking. Some of these chains they got some teeth left on them, but they're stretched so bad from cutting stuff like out of the creek bottoms and stuff. You get a lot of grit and sand in there, and they wear to the point where you have to almost shorten them to be able to tighten them, but then they eventually end up where you can't sharpen them right anymore. So we get the saw and the vise. And then we're going to snug up the chain just a little bit. That isn't flopping around for us. Now, these are my minis. These are the guys I use the most. My 250 here. And I always like to push the saw up. You know, so the bar is sooner leaning upward than sagging down. So this is 3/8 chain, 1/4 inch tooth. And on each side, there's 14 teeth on one side. You can see how there's 2 teeth on the same side. And then there's 13 on the other. And again, keep your angle. And this would be your, I call them rounded tooth. They've got different terms for those. This one is the one that does the vertical plunge cut. Nice and smooth. And don't feel frustrated if it takes a long time and you feel you're stumbling. Just do it more. It's like everything in life. You just get good at it. And I always have trouble doing it this way. I mean, I don't know. I'm thinking what these chains cost. If there's 20, 22, maybe 25 bucks at the most. I don't know, everything is changing now so much, but really, they're not that much. And these smaller chains, I've noticed, I can't sharpen these as often. It seems like after I sharpen them like 6 or 8 times, they just don't stay sharp anymore. It's like their sharp edge is not as big as on the bigger chains. We went right around, so that chain only took us what? Not even 5 minutes. Well, we wouldn't get to our dealer in that time to do it for us.
So that was a bit of a tutorial my dad put together for us. I think he did a really great job. You know, he definitely has a lot of experience when it comes to it. He might not do it exactly the way everybody else does it. You know, everybody's got their own unique way. So I hope you guys learned a little something. And you leave your comments down below if you've had any experience doing it or if you learned something. Thanks for watching. We really appreciate it. And we'll see you next time.